Welcome to worship in the Unitarian Universalist Church of Charlotte. We are going to share in the opening words this morning. Kurt and I are going to get us started, and every time you see words written in bold on the screen, we'll say those all together. You who are broken-hearted, who woke today with the winds of despair whistling through your mind, come in.
You who are brave but wounded, struggling through life and hurting with every step, come in.
You who are fearful, who live with shadows hovering over your shoulders, come in. This place is the sanctuary, and it is for you.
You who are filled with happiness, whose abundance overflows, come in.
You who walk through your world with lightness and grace, who awoke this morning with strength and hope, you who have everything to give, come in. This place is our calling, a riverbank to channel the sweet waters of our lives, the place where we are called by the world's need.
Here we offer in love.
Here we receive in gratitude. Here we make a circle from the great gifts of breath, attention, and purpose.
Come in, you are welcome here.
As we prepare to sing, please turn and welcome the people around you.
We light this chalice flame in recognition and gratitude for our connection, and we radiate loving kindness to all beings everywhere. pretend that the chalice is lit. We are the light. Today's reading is The Invitation by Oriah Mountain Dreamer, and it's a prose poem called The Invitation, and we'll hear this poem in two parts, and I'll read the first part now, and then Eve will read the second later. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for, and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me in how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals, or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and the toes, without cautioning us to be careful, to be realistic, or to remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you're telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself, if you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul.
In this poem, through a series of the most searching and honest questions, Oriah Mountain Dreamer invites us to open ourselves to the roller coaster of spiritual experience, to not shrink back, but instead lean in when discovery and revelation are most intense. One of my more earth-shaking spiritual experiences happened while I was in college, studying abroad in Eastern Africa. I spent part of that time in Uganda, living with a family just outside the capital city of Kampala. The 20 other students from North America and I spent our time with our Ugandan host families, sharing meals and learning in the most intimate and beautiful ways what daily life looked like for them. We spent the rest of our time studying Ugandan history and current affairs, visiting smaller villages around the country to better understand how the current government's policies were affecting people's lives. On one such field trip, our guide pointed out the wells of clean drinking water that various international corporations had set up on the outskirts of some of these rural villages. But he laughed when we got excited about this innovative solution to the local water crisis. We were imagining the relief these wells must bring to the local people. But our guide explained that each company charged for use of their wells, charging, of course, what would only amount to meager pocket change in US dollars, pennies in most cases, but money that the people in the village didn't have, which meant that just yards away from clean drinking water, most people were still drinking the contaminated water, even though it could mean dying from dysentery. That entire trip, I sat with my host family in the morning and the evening, eating the meals they'd prepared and drinking the bottled water that the study abroad program provided for each of us. Our program directors were often reminding us to even brush our teeth with this bottled water so as not to get sick. I had thought about the ruthlessness of capitalism before, but this time I could feel it too, how the same system paying for me to go to college, paying for me to have this experience in Uganda, the same system kept up its strength, its crushing hold on the world by squeezing profit from everywhere, no exceptions, from even the most vulnerable and depleted sources. Almost every night of that stay with my Ugandan host family, their 2-year-old at some point would find his way under my mosquito net and climb into bed and curl up against me before falling into an untroubled and trusting sleep. I wanted so much to turn and run from the realization that was colliding in me. The robustness of this curious little boy and the dangerously precarious state of his environment. How the system causing further threat to his future was enabling mine. But the smell of his warmth each night infused me with hope for the world. So instead of running from the transformation going on within me, I held still and allowed myself to be flooded with a sense of the connectedness of all life that both deeply troubled and amazed me. Here is the second half of Oriah Mountain Dreamer's prose poem, The Invitation. I want to know if you can see beauty, even when it is not pretty, every day, and if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand at the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments.
when Eve invited me to be part of the service this morning, she said that I would have a period of 4 or 5 minutes to relate a personal story about what we were talking about. I said, oh, I'm in trouble, 4 or 5 minutes. See, I can talk for 4 hours, but 4 minutes is a real challenge. So I'm going to try, with the help of my little friend here, to stay within the boundaries. But anytime you're talking about connection and spirituality, time sort of tends to want to expand on you. But my story started in really 1991. I was retiring from the Air Force. I'd been in the Air Force 23 years. And in the Air Force, you are part of a community. There's a clear purpose for your life. No matter where you go, you're welcomed. The structure's exactly the same. You can stay at a place for 3 minutes or 3 years and then go halfway around the world. And when you get there, you have a sponsor. They welcome you in. They bring potluck. They welcome your family, get the right school set up, and the whole structure is right there. So there's never any doubt from the time I was a kid, really, that I was part of something big and connected. But in 1991, I retired. And at that point, I was out there. I took a job working as a consultant and a trainer and facilitator with the company. And what I knew, my reality there became hotel rooms and airplane rides. And when I wasn't with a client, I was by myself. And my underlying reason, who I was gone. I mean, so I felt myself completely adrift and lost. I started to question what the point was of life itself. And those were some lonely, dark days, and it started to show up in life. Well, struggled through that, thinking I was okay. But then in 1996, my little brother Blaine was dying of cancer, and as his body got weaker, his spirit got stronger, almost in direct correlation. And a couple of days before he left, he died. He said, "Look, death is no big deal. I'm going to walk through a gauzy curtain into the next plane of existence, and everybody's there and everything is there. I'm never leaving. I'm totally connected with that." And he did. He just passed and made a simple, easy transition. But it really jerked me out of my laziness. I wouldn't even call it agnosticism. I was apathetic. I just didn't bother with it, and completely secular life. But that really got my attention. It's like, am I alone, truly, or am I part of something bigger? Without even knowing what that bigger might be. And I started on a quest. And at that exact time, some friends of mine who knew I was grieving for my brother suggested that we get together in a men's group to share difficult times and to help each other get through it and to start to look at the big questions that I was grappling with. And we met, started meeting. It was a great help. And then one of the guys said, "Hey, why don't we go up to Zen Mountain Monastery up in New York and dive deep into meditation and see what's there." And at that point, I was on a quest. So I went up and I started meditating. And, all I knew then was monkey mind and all these thoughts and popping corn. And I couldn't sit still for 5 minutes, let alone like 5 hours a day. But, you just have to keep at it. You have to keep practicing. And the deeper I went, it didn't happen that weekend. So over the next year or two, I went back several times. And what happened was I started to sense a presence and a stillness that was, at that time I didn't know it was within me, but it was there, out there. And I could sense a still point that existed that I wanted, but the more I wanted it, the further it got away. So I asked the abbot, I said, "I want to get to that still point. How do you get there?" And he's a Buddhist, right? So he smiled and he says, "More practice is needed." They never answer the question. So I said, okay, so I'm back on the cushion, and sure enough, at some point, I don't even recall exactly when it was, that still point, I experienced that stillness, like total stillness. And at that moment, the sense of self that I had defined myself as, fell away, completely fell away. And what I experienced was the universe looking at everything. Like I experienced from the point of complete, unquestionable connection with everything. Kind of like looking back out at what I used to be, and I did not want to leave. I mean, it was bliss, it was beauty, it was joy. But, you know, you have to live. Now, you know, you take that out into the real world where people do things that you don't like and you get upset and all that. So it's always a challenge to get back there. But at that point, I realized that I was not alone, that I was connected, that there's an energetic presence in the universe that drives us all, animates us all. And so that we may suffer the illusion of being alone from time to time, but we can't be alone. And of course, once I realized that I could not abuse or feel superior to or hurt another being because it made no sense. It would be like, you know, cutting off your toe because you stubbed it, something like that. So things definitely changed, and I started living my life as though I were connected, which completely changed everything for me. Not coincidentally, yesterday when I was putting some thoughts together, I got this email from a site that I'd never received an email from, and this is what it was. Love is the activation of your spirit reaching out to make connection. It overcomes grief, harbors no ill will, and heals all separation. So maybe the Beatles had it right. Love is all you need.
When we have a rattling, ground-shaking spiritual experience, when we have an encounter with reality that unnerves us, when we find ourselves flooded by a vast and overwhelming revelation, we sometimes turn inward. We sometimes spiral downward at first. We find ourselves in need of a kind of hibernation from the rest of the world. The need to give in to that desire to withdraw, curl up in solitude and rest. After such a collision, we need time alone to regather the various pieces of ourselves. That steep descent into our inner world is necessary when we come into contact with an experience we can't yet whittle down into bite-sized pieces, into something manageable that will fit inside the scope of our day-to-day life. In such times, it is necessary to be alone. The experiences that most shake my understanding of the world do indeed send me inward. My dad died during my first pregnancy, and I was utterly overwhelmed by an intense experience of life and death crashing into each other. The world around me, the assumptions I built my way of life on, no longer made sense. And knowing that no one could understand the unique intricacies of my grief, I withdrew. I went inward alone for what seemed like a very long time. During this time, a friend of mine invited me to share an Airbnb with her halfway between us. She'd gone inward too, on a journey within herself brought on by the cruel, open-ended longing of infertility. So we went away for a weekend to wrestle with death and with loss, committing ourselves fully to our own unique paths of grieving. Well, Sunday morning came, and I was snuggled up in bed, having planned, I confess, to sleep through any and all opportunities to attend a worship service. But my friend came in with a cup of tea and woke me up and said, let's go to service. And one of the bummers of being a minister is when that happens, you can't say no. Normally, engaging and being around other people brings me more to life, but my grief had made me feel brittle and not like myself. But not having it in me to resist, we went. We were staying close to a Unitarian Universalist congregation housed in a beautiful old building. We made our way there and found a seat among the friendly, unfamiliar faces. And the children's story that morning was about death. In the story, death was a gentle, wise being, having a conversation with a little girl who did not want her grandmother to die. Slowly, as the story unfolded, death showed the little girl what life would be like if nothing or if no one ever died. Then death left the little girl to her own journey, leaving her filled with a new curiosity and less afraid. When the story was over, we sang together. And I've always heard that when people are singing together, their heartbeats become more in sync. You find a kind of shared rhythm. And this felt true to me on that morning. And it occurred to me while we were singing that the other people in the room at one time or another had encountered death too. The people around me had asked questions like the ones forming in my mind. What is life after we lose someone we love so fiercely? And how should I live knowing that I too will die? When I had woken up that morning, death and grief were solitary experiences, overwhelming encounters to endure alone, grasping around in my inner world for some kind of solace. Then I heard a story and sang a song with my fellow human beings, and somehow my aloneness led me to a kind of belonging. We can go so far into our aloneness that we do find a sort of clearing deep within ourselves, where suddenly we understand that we're not alone at all. This is the place where our shared questions take shape. It's the place where we discover that we do not, after all, journey alone. As singular, unique, and lonely as our individual searching can be, we realize the further we go inward that this searching has led us yet again to our shared human experience, to a realization of how connected we are, how much we need one another. In my own time of grief, I descended so deep into myself. I eventually found that I was, in fact, living the way other people who are grieving live, asking the questions they ask. At first glance, it seems like each of us stands alone, like trees set apart, until we discover, as we descend into our own solitary experience, that there is hidden from daily view a complex and verdant root system that connects us all. And when we remember this, we know that even during the most earth-shaking of storms, this hidden root system is at work, transferring nutrients and vitality from one life to another. As we descend deeper into our aloneness, we discover a kind of breathtaking belonging to something much bigger than our individual experiences, perspectives, hopes, needs, fears. I was struck that Sunday while visiting that congregation with my friend, hearing the story and singing those songs. It struck me that part of being in a spiritual community is that we're paying attention to this larger belonging. Often we're here because we want to honor it. We want to show reverence for it weekly. And I find it's true here as well in this spiritual community, watching how each of you responds to your interdependence, how each of you honors our connectedness to one another, showing reverence for this larger belonging. Some of you get together to study. Some of you study the ways that the notion that white people or straight people or people born in the United States thinking these people are superior is toxic to our shared root system. When one of us dies, some of you show up at memorial services to make sure there are enough tissues in the pew, enough oil in the chalice. We do that often, but and you stand at the entrance with a gentle compassion, greeting every grieving person who walks through the door. Some of you honor our interdependence by bringing an abundant, hearty breakfast in the wee hours of Monday morning for our homeless neighbors sleeping in Freeman Hall. Some of you nurture our connectedness, making coffee and cleaning up after the community has snacked and drank and enjoyed one another's company after each service. And you turn to one another at the beginning of worship to shake hands and say to the people around you, welcome, you belong here. As we said together earlier in the words of Kathleen McTeague, this community is our calling, a riverbank to channel the sweet waters of our lives, the place where we are called by the world's need. Here there is a larger belonging that each of us found in one way or another through a portal deep in our aloneness. Here there's a connectedness that harbors compassion and struggles for justice, a community of shared experience we can nurture while we're here, knowing it will go on nourishing others long after we're gone.
That's connection. Thank you. So beautiful. Well, I'd like to extend a welcome to today's service. We're happy you're with us today in this room or joining us remotely. And we're pleased to have guests with us this morning. Our members would like to greet you personally following the service. So if you're visiting, would you please raise your hand and keep it up? Members, take note of the guests seated near you. And after the service, you're all invited to join us for coffee and conversation in Freeman Hall. Thanks for being here. Should it enhance your experience for future services, you can find large print order of service and personal hearing assistance devices at the table in the foyer at the entrance. There's also an elevator available just around the corner on this level. If you'd like to know more about us, please fill out a yellow card and place it in the offering basket later in the service. And members with a life event that you'd like to share can do so on the reverse side of the card. The cards and offering envelopes are on the clipboards at the end of the row, and if we'd please pass those now. Visitors interested in hearing about how to become a member can talk with our membership coordinator, Kelly Green, there in the back. Hi, Kelly. Her contact information is on the back of your order. Again, to each of you, welcome.
Following this service, visitors, you are welcome to get coffee or tea in Freeman Hall and then head downstairs to the conference room. One of our longtime members will be there for casual conversation to help you get to know us better. If you've ever been curious about the way things get done in this congregation, or if you are always wondering what the heck is the coordinating team and what do they do, you can join me and my colleagues Jay Leach and Doug Swaim here in the sanctuary next Sunday at 1 to learn more. And if you're looking for ways to get more connected with the people sitting around you on Sunday mornings, it's time again to sign up for social suppers, which are small group dinners in people's homes. You meet with the same group for a few months. If you're interested, you don't have to be a member. You can sign up through our e-newsletter currents or in Freeman Hall. This morning, we are holding in prayer and sending love to our minister, Jay Leach, to his wife, Melissa, and to their child, Emerson. As their family is grieved that Jay's mom is now under the care of hospice, and his dad is recovering from serious surgery. There's a joy, sorrow, or remembrance on your heart this morning that you'd like to honor. Later in the service, when the offering baskets are being passed and music's being played, you're welcome to come forward, member and visitor alike, to light a candle. Would you be with me now in meditation? Getting more comfortable in your seat. And letting the silence sink in for a moment. If you feel alone in your searching, if your doubt is heavy or your grief is fresh, if you face a crossroads and the way forward is uncertain, if you are weary from the journey inward, don't turn away. keep breathing. Go deeper, keep breathing. There, in your own depths, you will start to recognize your experience in the stories of others. You will discover again that you are singular, but not alone. Don't turn away, go deeper, and you will come to the place of belonging, the place where life is shared, where we can hold even the most difficult questions and find meaning together. May it be so.
We have so much to be grateful for. So as we prepare for offering this morning, let's be mindful that universal love through us blesses all that we have, all that we give, and all that we receive, and we're grateful for that. We'll now both give and receive the offering. Please join me now in an affirmation of our faith, rising in body and or spirit. And though we walk within a vast loneliness, the promise we offer here is that we do not walk alone. This is a holy place we do together. In this place of silence and celebration, solemnity and music, we make a sanctuary and name our home.
Gelfand says, "In this sanctuary we harvest bushels of strength for one another and offer our crop with hands of compassion and generosity. In the authentic and gentle manner of our connections, we cultivate a simple sweetness to brighten our spirits. May we be grateful for the ways we nourish and uplift each other, for it is the sharing of this hallowed time together that sustains us." Please be seated.